Welcome back to Tuesday night's Longhorn Livestream by On Texas Football. I'm your host, Amanda Atwell. This one's presented by Andy Ludicky. I'm joined by CJ Vogel and Jeff Howe. And CJ was just saying it seems like the season has ended and things have just gotten more busy. Seems like we've been getting news every couple hours at this point. So we'll get into all of that. Y'all make sure to get in any questions if you have. Super chats will jump to the top of our list. But starting out, the most recent news that has come out of the Longhorn camp is the departure of Chad Scott, the running backs coach. Is this something you guys anticipated after the performance of just the running backs room this year? Just very underwhelming performance.
Yeah, I don't know, Jeff, if I view it as a true indication of the play on the field as to why the departure, as to why he was dismissed. But look, I had heard over the last month or so that, I thought maybe that there were some rumblings with the running back spot with, Chad Scott specifically. I didn't put much to it because, of course, year one, right? You're expected to give some guys some leash. Well, Steve Sarkisian says, no, none of that, right? We're done giving leash. We're done giving, some play that's not up to the standard. So look, and maybe this just wasn't a good fit for Chad Scott at the University of Texas. I don't know. I don't know if that was something that he was hoping to get back with Neil Brown once he took the job up at North Texas. Of course, he was under him at West Virginia, came into Austin in February. Neil Brown then followed. Now with Brown going up to North Texas, it would make sense if he followed the lead back up to Denton once again. But I think it's one surprising at the timing, right? It's only December 9th. The season's only been over for about a week and a half. But altogether, this won't be the last coaching turnover, I believe, that we will see from this staff this year. And altogether, I think, look, this is a very coveted position, and we talked about it last year when this position first opened up. There were a number of coaches across the country reaching out to know who was in spot to get hired here, what this job would entail altogether. Look, it's going to be a coveted position, and I think Sark's going to nail this hire again.
Yeah, to me, I'm kind of with you, CJ. I'm not surprised that it happened. I'm kind of surprised at the timing, which leads me to believe that Sark has a guy or a group of guys that he's going to go target and not waste any time and make sure that, hey, as much as you need to rework this running back room, make sure you've got that position coach in place by the time the portal officially opens. You probably want to have it done before that. As far as Chad Scott goes, I mean, look, he's a proven coach at the college level. I think this is just a situation where the fit at Texas just didn't work out. The fit on Sark's staff just didn't work out. And the surprising thing from that standpoint is, man, Sark's been really good about making hires, but I think you look at, and I think there's a couple other hires on the staff that you can look at and say, okay, what an ideal circumstances under which they were hired. Tashard Choice left, he took that job on the Lions staff. I want to say that was like in February, like second, third week of February. And by the end of the month, Chad Scott was hired. So recruiting for 2025 is pretty much done at that point. You essentially had to restart the 26 cycle with your running back recruits at that point. Like you started from square one.
Right.
And, to Amanda, to your point at the top, like the running back production or lack thereof this year didn't help. Like it's just, it wasn't the straw that broke the camel's back, but it's definitely something to consider. I just think this is a chance for Sark to revamp the run game completely, like schematically, from a personnel standpoint, from a coaching standpoint. The whole thing can be reworked. And right now, since you're in the process of remaking the running back room, hey, maybe it's a good idea to let the guy and it's a different deal with Derek Cooper and Jet Walker because they've already signed, but at least they're only going to work with the new running backs coach. They will have not had practice with Chad Scott. So everybody that's going to be in that running back room, especially your portal additions, let the new guy at least get a feel for your portal additions, and then everybody can hit the ground running with a fresh start in January.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that this will have any impact on whether or not Wisner stays or goes? I mean,
Wisner is interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe. Of course, with Wisner, you have the NFL decision. On top of an NFL decision in the NIL era comes what kind of offer, what kind of money is set forth by the Texas, collective and NIL and rev share and all that then lures him back. But look, I think this could have an impact. And I'm not saying it's going to sway him one way or the other, but knowing kind of the behind the scenes, I think it might have a little bit of an impact here.
They could probably just maybe gives him something else to think about. Maybe want to see who the new hire is and get a feel for it. I think there's other things that are going to determine whether or not Trey Wisner's back at Texas. The running backs coach, it could help. But at the end of the day, we're talking about, money's going to be a factor, and the money also dependent upon, kind of where's his NFL stock. Right. How can he improve? I think that's the biggest piece of it. Money's going to have a factor. Like, let's not be naive to that. Like, it's it's part of the situation. But I think for a guy like Wisner, I think you've got to get honest feedback on, okay, where's my stock right now, and how much could it realistically improve with another year? Well, Trey Wisner, I don't think Trey Wisner, and I love Trey Wisner. I'm a Trey Wisner guy. Trey Wisner is probably never going to be a first-round running back, probably not even a second-round running back. But can he take himself from like an undrafted free agent to like an early day 3 or a late day 2? Maybe. I don't know. But then now you're talking about the money situation and what's feasible, and that's something for his family to sit down and consider. So it can help, but I don't know that I wouldn't expect it to tip the scales, in other words.
Yeah, my thing with Wisner after this year is I personally, I mean, I'm obviously not an NFL scout, but I can't see from what he was able to do on the field this year enough for it to make sense for him to declare for the draft, especially with just the situation Texas was in regard to the offensive line and the protection he was getting. He didn't really do much in games other than Vanderbilt, OU, A&M. He doesn't really have a full breadth of recent work to go off. And obviously when he did well, he did great. But that's my thing with him. And personally, I feel like it would make more sense for him to come back for one more year to try to up it to that. But yeah, so I'm in agreement with you there.
Hey, if the 3 games that you could point to are against top 10 teams at the time, that's pretty good workload right there. Now, and again, the inconsistencies in the run game, obviously, I think points more towards the offensive line, the inability essentially to create running lanes. It's one thing to then become, what Trey was, hey, he was the leading returner coming into the season in the SEC. So the body of work to me isn't the issue. It's more the stature, the frame. Is that an NFL level body that can sustain 10 to 15 hits if the blazing speed isn't there in his back pocket? That's something I don't know at the moment. So right now, I think you look at a Trey Wisner, you say there is an NFL future, but how much in terms of real estate in the draft can he ultimately climb? And that's the decision whether or not to return or end up declaring.
Now, as far as who is filling the position in this running back room as leading the running back room, I know we've seen some circulating potential new hires, specifically over at Florida. What do you guys think about this Florida rumor with the running back room coach over there, Jabbar Jalouk?
Yeah. I can tell you this, having worked with Matt Zenitz during my time over 24/7, Matt Zenitz is a good guy and as connected as anybody covering college football at a national level. He's not going to put that out unless he's got pretty good idea of something brewing, whether it's coming from an agent or the coach himself or who. I haven't talked to Matt. I don't know who his source is, obviously. But, Jabbar Jalouk, was the head coach, formerly the head coach at Edna Carr, got really strong ties to Louisiana, specifically Metro New Orleans. He was at La Tech for a minute with Skip Holtz. He was with Billy Napier at UL. He's been with Billy Napier at Florida, recruited all throughout the Southeast. Gives you, again, I think anytime you have a guy that can give you a foothold, CJ, in a talent-rich area like Metro New Orleans and Baton Rouge and really understands. And Louisiana is still one of those states, I really believe this, where, man, guys off the beaten path, you can find kind of a diamond in the rough, a Malcolm Roach type guy that ends up being – a really productive player for you. Maybe the LSU, for whatever reason, didn't look at or looked at and didn't want. I think it helps to have somebody like that on your staff. So, Jabbar Jalouk is one. I know Jerry talked about it earlier, CJ, on the live you guys did after this news broke. Hey, maybe get a feel for what LSU's thinking right now with Frank Wilson. And if Frank Wilson ends up as a free agent, I think you at least have to make that call. to see what's going on. Some people have asked in the chat about Stan Drayton. I don't know. I know part of the reason when Stan Drayton initially came to Texas to be a part of Tom Herman's staff, his daughter, who actually is a gymnast at LSU now, part of the, I guess, a bonus for him taking the Texas job was she ended up training in Houston. She was, an Olympic hopeful at one point. So I know that was a really big draw for the family, as she could train, and, the gymnastics training was going to end up being really good for her. So yeah. I don't know if Stan Drayton's chomping at the bit and I don't know what his situation is with, is he still getting money from Temple? Does he want to be a college position coach again? Does he want to go back to the NFL? So I would think he's got options. But here's my thing with the running backs coach position. And Stan Drayton, CJ, I know you remember, he basically recruited whoever his running back targets were. That's basically who Stan Drayton was on. He wasn't doing area recruiting or any of that stuff. He was the recruited running backs. So that's pretty much it. I don't think you can have, in the NIL rev share era, I don't think you can have a guy that just recruits one guy and just hangs out and takes the running backs out on the practice field. I think now it's more important than ever. I think you've got to have a guy that at multiple positions in an area, along with his position, can really evaluate talent. And I think you've got to have somebody who can develop said talent. I think being I hate the term rainmaker recruiter because it gets overused, but I just don't know that that's as important now as much as it is. You're almost looking, CJ, the traits you look for. It's almost like you look for an NFL assistant coach. Hey, can you help us evaluate talent, and can you coach this position really well? It's not so much about, can you, and the recruiting ties don't hurt, but there's other stuff that is, I think, more important in today's day and age.
No, and to add to that, look, I think we've seen that at times with Steve Sarkisian, the way that he's built not just his personnel staff, but his coaching staff as well, right? It comes with territory, and it's coming with familiarity in, the deep south of Georgia when he hired, Aaron Joe, who's off to Denton, to join Neil Brown's staff. It comes with Kenny Baker and some of his connections to Georgia. The folks, Chad Scott was a guy that had connections down to Florida, right? Mark Orfe, Florida and Louisiana and Houston, right? It comes with the territory that is assigned. So when these coaches go out on the road, it's not just, hey, I'm the coach at Texas now. It's, hey, I'm coming back home to recruit in the area that I'm very familiar with coaches that have been there since I was around, that I can connect with, and now can go out and prove that I can develop them into NFL draft picks. That's what we've seen anytime that these coaching, positions open up at the University of Texas. And that's how I think it should be, Jeff, right? It's develop first, and then it's use your connections to get yourself into a door that previously was shut. Now that you're in the SEC, now in the world of NIL and rev share, to your point, most of these doors are cracked open a little bit easier. But I did want to go back to Jabbar Jalouk, because I think, you mentioned Louisiana, you mentioned time down in Austin, in Texas, you mentioned time down in Florida. You mentioned, Jeff, development and finding talent. How about this? LSU, Darius Geis and Leonard Fournette, pretty good. You go down to Louisiana Tech, Kenneth Dixon, for those that follow the NFL, he's having quite a year right now. Jaden Ball, Trevor Etienne at Florida, that doesn't also include Jacoby Jackson. Pretty good, talented trio of running backs. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was another running back that he recruited to LSU at the time. And then Elijah Mitchell at Louisiana Lafayette. You go back to Louisiana Tech and Louisiana Lafayette, two running backs, Elijah Mitchell and Kenneth Dixon, still in the NFL, still running pretty significantly. Kenneth Dixon actually is La Tech's leading touchdown rusher and leading all-time all-purpose yards. So you find guys, and that, again, helps in the world of Louisiana. Going to Frank Wilson real quick. Look, he was named the interim whenever Brian Kelly was fired. He's been around LSU for a long time, was there in 2010 to 2015, took the UTSA job as a head coach from 2016 to 2019, and then returned back to Louisiana, where obviously he is very familiar. But that's going to be interesting, because we've seen some headlines, we've seen some tweets over the last, 2 or 3 days. We don't know quite what that future at LSU will be under Lane Kiffin. So if he becomes available, look, you have two fantastic options right there with connections to the state of Louisiana in Jabbar Jalouk and Frank Wilson. But, of course, we've also kind of played out and predicted where Sark will go position hires, and he surprises us at times. So ultimately, we'll have to wait and see. But right now, those would be my first two calls.
Definitely. All right, we'll get into some of these new portal movements after we hear from our friends over at myperfectfranchise.net. Are you looking to diversify or new ways to make money? Andy Ludicky at myperfectfranchise.net can help you do just that by finding new businesses that will fit your time allotment and financial goals. Call him or email him to learn more. He's got a really cool process that identifies a perfect fit for you. Email him now at Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. So a lot of news on the portal front this week. We got 3 departures today. I'm not sure if any of these were surprises to you guys. We'll start off with Aaron Butler. I believe did he come in first, or who came in first this morning?
Yeah, he was the first this morning. I would say certainly not a surprise here. Butler was given some opportunities to earn some run in the special teams, especially in the offseason, as well as at spring ball and fall camp. But I think the writing was on the wall here when Dalen McCutcheon was the first, young wide receiver to join the trio in the circle of trust. That kind of said everything that was needed to be said in this position. So, look, I hope Aaron Butler in the highlight tape that he dropped today, I was sitting there saying, whoa, okay. Mm-hmm. And he's got some juice to him. He can get open amongst the best of them. So, hopefully he's able to find a spot. But I think this was one that inside the building was not a surprise at all.
Yeah. And then moving on, we got Santana Wilson, and then the most recent one, Connor Stroh. I feel like that's probably the biggest news of the day because this is a name that I feel like most Texas fans were familiar with, and you just kind of look at his size stats. If you're not super familiar with him, he looks like a big physical offensive lineman. We had a question about this. Let me get back to it. Is our O-line fixing to implode? Connor Stroh is leaving. I would say that's a bit dramatic. I don't think – the O-line wasn't great last year, so I think you want to see it look a little bit different going into next year. And was Connor Stroh starting the last couple games of the season?
No, he was not. Jeff, so. You're muted, by the way. I'm going to call you out real quick.
Sorry, that's what I get. No, I think was Florida the last game he started, I guess?
No, they went back to him.
He played against Mississippi State.
Was there an injury that they had to go back to him?
When DJ Campbell got hurt against Mississippi State, and then later in that game when
Hudson got dinged up.
Yeah, but you remember that game too, CJ, when they got it became pretty much just a pass pro game late. They really there was no need to run the ball. They went with Stroh over Nick Brooks at guard at that point. Look, is the O-line fixing to implode? That's you can look at it that way if you want. I'm not going to look at it same thing I want to say about running back. Like this is Kyle Flood and Sark going back and realizing they made a miscalculation going into the season that they thought there were some guys that were far enough along in their development and there was enough young guys that they didn't need to hit the portal as hard as they otherwise might have, and we're going to ride with what they had and trust their development. And things didn't pan out. Now, and we've been saying it, CJ, here on the channel, probably you might have been the first one to bring it up maybe after the Florida game. Like, hey, they're going to hit offensive line in the portal. Like, there's no question about it. And like we've been talking about it, and this is it. Like, guys see the writing on the wall. Like, Texas is not going to play around. They are planning on being extremely aggressive in the portal when it comes to rebuilding this offensive line. So is it imploding? Yeah, from an Exodus standpoint, yes, but this is something the staff has planned on happening at this point. None of these are surprises.
No, not a surprise. And again, imploding is an odd word because, look, if they had a game this weekend, I'd say no. But knowing that the portal is at the end of the month and that's when also other portal decisions will come in, I think you look at it and say it's going to look significantly different, especially when you add in some of the declarations to the NFL and some opt-outs for some seniors. So, what might that starting five look like when Texas plays Michigan? To be completely honest, I don't know. And I don't think that's far-fetched to say, but what I do know is that right now, Texas and its approach to the 2026 season on the offensive line, you're going to see some more movement. And right now, even with Connor Stroh entering the portal, I don't think you should be very surprised at some of the names that are entering as well.
Yeah, I think implode's probably a bit negative of a term. I think more of just it's going to be reworked, and it needs to be reworked. That's something.
Renovation, a facelift.
Yeah, you can look at this. You can look at it as a negative thing, or you can look at it as a positive thing. And I think change to this O-line going into next year, you can't get much worse from some of the stuff we were seeing at the beginning of this season in some of these games. So a rework is needed. And I think players that were not contributing at the later end of the season that are more advanced in their career, they're going to want to go get an opportunity elsewhere where they're going to be contributing more.
And real quick, Stroh graduated from the University of Texas in 3 years. Congratulations to him. He's going to have interest from the Midwest, both in Big 12 and Big 10 schools. He's going to find a spot that will allow him to get a graduate degree, as well as, making some good coin at the next level. So that's exciting. Good for Connor Stroh.
Sorry, CJ. No, Amanda's right. This is a reworking of the offensive line, and this kind of ties into the Chad Scott thing, because it's, hey, nobody's going to cry for Texas because Texas played late in the season last year because they were in the playoff. But I mean, you really got behind the 8 ball because you played so late. You were in a position to fall behind on the portal and staff situations. Like, I mean, by the time Tashard Choice left and you needed a running backs coach, that pool was significantly smaller than it was if you'd have needed to make a hire in late December, early January. So it's just one of those things that, hey, fortunate enough to be on the doorstep of playing in the national championship game, but at the same time, you're behind on a lot of stuff. And I think, again, you want to be in the playoff, and it's disappointing that Texas isn't in the playoff. But if Sark, as the head of this organization, pushes the right buttons and makes the right moves over the next few weeks, this can be beneficial in terms of them getting their ducks in a row and putting a product on the field in 2026 that's more consistent, that wins more games. And at this time next year, we're probably not talking about being on the outside looking in at the playoff.
Yeah, and I think this is something also that I noticed last year. There were a lot of teams that were leaning heavily into the portal, and Texas was not. And I think that's for all the reasons you mentioned, Jeff. They were playing late into the season. Oh, woe is me. You didn't get as much time to look at your portal additions because you were playing in the college football playoffs. Nobody's going to feel bad at you for that. But there were a lot of teams, look at A&M, look at OU, that made a lot of portal additions that made them college football playoff teams this year. So I think that's a way you can look at it. Texas did not get to where they wanted to get this year, and hopefully they can use this time effectively. And it looks like with all the movement that is happening, you can look at it one way. I got a text from a friend today saying, "Are we effed?" Because she's just seeing all of this stuff come through about Texas players leaving, a coach leaving, and it is an onslaught of information. If you aren't as in tune to it, it can look a little bit scary, but it seems that Sark is on it and has a plan, and it's just moving a lot quicker than what some may be comfortable with.
Tell Peyton to get a water in there.
Yeah. I mean, you guessed who it was. I get a slight panic text every time we drop something on Twitter. Like, is this terrible? Are we screwed? I'm like, unless you see something dramatic involving the head coach or quarterback, I think you can be confident that we'll be just fine.
Yeah, I think there's two things. I think my New Year's resolution that I'm trying to enact several weeks ahead of time is spend less time doom scrolling. Like, your mental health will probably be a lot better for it, one. And two, Bobby made this point, something unrelated, on Coffee and Football this morning. I think it's good to reinforce now that we're having this discussion. I think us that follow the program and fans that follow it, all of us, we're in this Texas bubble. And I think it can really amplify things, because not often are we just kind of pulling away and looking at the 30,000-foot view. Everybody is dealing with this right now. Mm-hmm. Everybody's dealing with portal. Everybody's dealing with coaching stuff. Everybody's trying to put themselves, especially if you're not in the playoff, you are taking stock of every single thing in your program. This is a good thing. This is Steve Sarkisian taking stock of every single thing in this program, saying, if we can upgrade something, let's go ahead and upgrade it. Let's go ahead and make it better. Because, CJ, it's not just about like you got maybe 1 year left with Arch Manning. It's more than that. It's today in college football, as much as you want to try to look 2-3 years down the road, now, you really can't afford to look more than, hey, let's think about 2026 right now and be all in on 2026. And then as 26 winds down, take stock of where we're at. And then let's load back up to go all in on 2027. Like, that's just with roster fluidity and coaches moving on and the volatility in college football right now. it's a 1-year proposition. It's a year-to-year proposition in college football right now. And so this is, and this isn't spin. Like, this is a good thing. This is what I wanted from Sark. Like, you got to look under the hood and take a look at every single thing. And if something needs to be changed, go ahead and change it now.
Yeah, and if you're stressing about seeing the number of players hitting the portal, just go look at a broader website that's covering all the players in college football hitting the portal, and maybe that'll make you feel a little bit better, because it's not just Texas. You just only pay attention to Texas. Like, what's the term? You have your own echo chamber of information. Just take a step outside and look at the rest of college football, and that might make you feel just a little bit better.
I will say this, because look, I think this year's numbers of portal entrants is going to significantly pass or surpass that of last year. I know Texas did a fine job of retaining some young talent. Texas was obviously a very young team, so it's easier to keep your freshmen turning to sophomores when they see a very light depth chart across the board. And I think that's where Texas was at a year ago. This year, and with what we know of Texas going to be uber aggressive in the portal coming in, I think you're going to see that number of exports around 18 to 20. And I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. And as we sit today, of the guys that have entered the portal, only 2 of them have seen starting games at the University of Texas, right? That was CJ Baxter, who, as we talked about, very dinged up during his time at the University of Texas, very unfortunate there. And then Connor Stroh, who with 5 career starts, 10 career appearances, I think we all kind of saw the writing on the wall towards the back end of the year when he was not in the starting rotation. So that's kind of what I'm getting across, is there are going to be guys that it'll probably seem like a big loss, and it could be, right? These are good players. That's why they're at the University of Texas. But I think the staff is very, very prepared for what's to come with the guys that are still yet to announce their decision to enter the portal.
I think you're getting to the point where college football rosters are going to be more like NFL rosters from this standpoint. I think basically, especially now that you're going to 105, you basically split it in half. And of that top half, a quarter of that top half is going to be, that's your Arch Mannings, your Colin Simmonses, like your high earners, your 5-star recruits, your big time portal acquisitions that are eating up the bulk of your money between NIL and rev share. That second quarter in the top half is going to be guys that you're sticking with from a developmental standpoint that might be a year away, or maybe they're they're multi-year guys in the portal, but guys that you're planning on being significant contributors. And that bottom half of your roster, I don't like it, but it is what it is in college football now. CJ, that bottom part of your roster, it's going to be heavy churn. It's going to be guys that, hey, maybe you're going into year 3 and we don't see you as an NFL guy. Right. And we're not going to pay you a rev share. Now, I'm not just talking about Texas. I'm talking about everywhere. We're not going to pay you a rev share. It's basically like a rookie a rookie saying, hey, this rookie deal you're on, we're not going to renew it. Like, you can go be a free agent and go test the market. So it's just going to be a lot of churn in that bottom half of your roster.
Yeah, because you know who will have rev share and will have spots? Teams that are looking to get Texas caliber backups to come be starting caliber players for them. So that's the ecosystem.
Yeah, basically that top half is going to be the college football equivalent of like your first round draft picks, your priority guys that you'd sign when free agency opens, guys like that. And that bottom half of your roster, your value 3 stars and guys like that, that's basically your late round draft picks and your undrafted free agents. And go look at NFL rosters and how much churn and turnover there is with that portion of your roster. That's where we are in college football right now.
Yep. All right. We will get to some more of your questions after we hear from our friends over at Duck Camp. Jeff, can you tell us about Duck Camp?
I sure can, Amanda. Duck Camp makes gear for folks who live for being out there, whether that's in a duck blind at sunrise or on the 40 acres for a Saturday kickoff. Born right here in Austin, Duck Camp builds best-in-class hunting and fishing apparel that works just as well for a full day in the field as it does for a long day of tailgating. From sun protection shirts that keep you cool during those early season scorchers to their iconic game series hats that feel like instant classics, Duck Camp gear is ready for football season, hunting season, and every season in between. Get out there, stay out there, and hook them. Shop Duck Camp at duckcamp.com. And don't forget, On Texas Football Fam, use the promo code ONTexas25. That's ONTexas25 to get 25% off of your order at duckcamp.com. And let's say thank you to another sponsor with the help of a couple of lifetime Longhorns. Let's hear from our friends over at Advanced Pain Care.
Pros know the pain stops here. Physical therapy helps me as an athlete then and now. And do I still need therapy? Yes. Advanced pain care helps with that.
Injuries will stack up. They'll add up. You can't let those injuries get you down, and advanced pain care has been very helpful for me.
We can help with whatever's got you down, from nerve damage to our spinal cord stimulator. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Same-day appointments available.
Advanced pain care. The pain stops here.
All right, guys, make sure to get your questions in. Super chats will jump to the top of our list. And I'm going to revert back to talking about the running backs coach position. We got this question. Could Texas use a 230-pound running back? The changes in coaches potentially contributing to some portal additions. And then following it up with, is Ba a good running back? So I think we know who the 230-pound running back was referring to. So what do you guys think about that as far as just seeing who some of these coordinators are and who they could potentially bring with them?
Look, I don't want to, sit here and just speculate on who the Texas, running back coach will be or who he could bring with, but it is fun to sit here and say, it would be fun to watch Jaden Ball in the Texas uniform. Of course, I think that would be objective and priority number one for John Summerall at Florida is, hey, is my quarterback remaining and is my star running back remaining? On top of that, hey, is Dallas Wilson, are you returning as well? That would be number one, number two, number three things I would do if I was the head coach of Florida. So to say that he's just willy-nilly going to jump into the portal, I think is putting the cart before the horse there. But back to that first question, could Texas use a 230-pound running back? I don't know about you guys. Maybe this is just me, but you go outside, you run around for a little bit, and you get that first fresh cup of water after a 110-degree day out in the sun heat down here in Texas, and that first sip of water kind of just goes all the way through, and it kind of rejuvenates. It feels great, right? To me, any 230-pound running back on this roster is going to feel exactly like that to this Texas staff because they haven't had anything like it. They've been deprived of a big body capable running back that they trust. That's a big key here over the last 2 years, right? CJ Baxter, obviously very limited. I don't want to say a shell of himself, but you go back to what he had in 2023 and it just looked different, right? And that's to be expected. You bang up your knee that bad, it takes a long time to get fully back. So again, I'm hoping that he does, but on the field, he didn't look like he had that burst. You didn't have anybody else outside of him to kind of man that role. And that's where things, felt like you were just sitting out there starving yourself or, just fully dehydrated. So that first cup of water, that first 230-pound running back, they're going to feel the exact same. That's my analogy right there.
I think sometimes we get too caught up on tools. And to me, if you're a 230-pound back, but you can't move the pile or, you're not scheme versatile and you're just a one-trick pony, that doesn't do you any good. And I'm not saying Jaden Ball's that guy because Jaden Ball is one of the more talented running backs in the SEC. But like CJ said, until he's going into the portal, you can't just put all your eggs in that basket because then if you haven't evaluated anybody, you're going to be left holding the bag at the end of the day. But to me, I look at the running styles of Derek Cooper and Jet Walker, and that to me signals for Sark. If I want to get this running game on track, I got to do it with physical sledgehammer type backs that can thump between the tackles, that can move the pile, that can maximize runs. Because even if you upgrade the offensive line, this isn't going to be you can't expect the offensive line to be perfect every game, to be the 2020 Alabama offensive line that Kyle Flood coached, where you're just rolling people off the ball every snap. It's not realistic. You've got to have guys that, hey, when it's 4th and 1 and everything is clogged up, can you put your head down and be tough enough, be physical enough to get us that 1 yard and keep the chains moving? It's more of a mentality style mindset for me than necessarily looking, hey, is this guy weigh X amount of pounds? Okay, let's go get him.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of getting caught up in that in other position groups where looking for just big men. Well, if big men can't move their feet, they can't protect the quarterback. So I think you're spot on with that, Jeff. And speaking on the running back room, will Michael Terry remain in the running back room?
Yeah, great question. I know that Texas gave him a look kind of in his own little Wildcat package towards the back end of the season, second half of the season. I've been told that he's expected to start the 26th season in the wide receiver room. It sounds like his route running ability has certainly increased and improved since the beginning of the year. Again, remember, this is a guy who didn't play specifically one spot at Alamo Heights in high school. He was all over the field. He did everything. He was taking snaps, throwing the football. He was running the football. He was catching the football. But right now, it sounds like fine-tuning that route running ability is priority number one for Michael Terry, and it's come a long way since then.
Another question I liked, what philosophical changes do you think we should expect to see different O-line guys to match? It's a deep question, philosophical.
To me, the run game at Texas has been way too wide zone dependent, way too outside zone dependent. And the problem with that is it's with your offensive line personnel and your running back personnel, quite frankly. Each of the last 2 years, when teams have made it a point to shut down your outside zone run game, you haven't had a counterpunch at all. So I think you've got to, you mentioned it a minute ago, Amanda. Like I think to an extent, this staff got so caught up on, hey, let's just recruit big people, big people, big people. Okay, well, if your big people can't move, they're big people, or your big people can only do a certain thing, and they've got a skill set that's easy to exploit, then they're not doing you any good. So I just think you've got to. So philosophical changes. To me, it's your run game has got to be more diverse, and you've got to have guys that, you want to be a good pass blocker, you want to be a good zone blocker. I got to have guys that can drive block too. I got to have guys that can pull. Like, you've got to have guys that are capable of doing multiple things, because I'll borrow a line from Sark. The more things you do well, the tougher you are to defend. Well, one of the reasons why Texas the last 2 years has been easier to defend is because they did a couple of things really well. And once those got shut down, you didn't have anything to fall back on.
Yeah.
All right, we got a super chat from Ipadilla79. Ignore box scores. What does the eyeball test show us as far as areas for technique improvement, i.e. Wingo flailing his arms while running, Wisner dancing instead of hard vertical, or DBs not turning heads around?
It's a good question. I think part of that comes with who's teaching, right? And, that still could change. Obviously, we just saw Chad Scott no longer with Texas. What other coaches end up walking out the door as well? That's going to be a big part of what then you change on the eyeball test. But I'm with you. Look, and I think there's something to specific cornerbacks as well, because everybody's taught, a specific way to backpedal, a specific way to play press or bail or whatever, right? It doesn't matter. But some cornerbacks just have that innate ability to know when to turn your head around and make a play on the football. And one of those guys that we didn't see a whole lot this year, he was dinged up for quite a bit, but Kobe Black coming into the game and making 2 plays on a football against Texas A&M, coming basically cold off the bench, that was something that I enjoyed seeing. And I think, there are guys on this roster, I think Grayson Littleton's one, I think Cade Phillips is another, that are just something about them knows how to play the football. So I hope that's something for improvement in 2026. I thought Texas actually protected the football very well this year, especially running with its running back specifically. So other than just catching a football, look, that's probably the one thing for me, Jeff.
Yeah, with Ryan Wingo specifically, like, I really hope him getting second team all SEC today, I hope that gives him a nice shot of confidence going into the offseason, because he really needs that. Like, I'm not down on Ryan Wingo. Like I said throughout the year, like, I've watched too many really talented receivers at Texas. Mike Davis, Devin Duvernay, Xavier Worthy. I've watched really talented guys show out as freshmen, have disappointing sophomore seasons, and then come right back and show as a junior, oh yeah, that's the guy we thought we see. So I by no means am ready to give up on Ryan Wingo. I think the Texas wide receivers, period, and I've got on Ryan Wingo about this too, and it's one thing that hopefully now we saw him start to kind of do it a little bit in the Texas A&M game. They've got to get better at drawing defensive pass interference. Like, Texas, if you look at the amount of times Texas is called for DPI and how many times Texas forces it to be called by the opponent, it's way, way out of whack. So I just think you've got to force the issue a lot more, especially when you've got a quarterback that can throw the deep ball and throws the deep ball really well. So that's one thing I think they've got to work on. I mentioned it with the offensive line. You just got to be more scheme versatile, and you've got to if you don't have guys that can pull and they can do that, they can climb to the second level, they can drive block, they can run duo, like, then okay, that's the type of guys you need to go get in the portal then. And yeah, they're going to cost money, but if you want this offense to click on all cylinders and to not be hamstrung when somebody takes one thing away, that's the kind of stuff you got to do. As far as DBs turning their head to look for the ball, I want guys to put themselves in a position to make a play on the ball. Not every defensive back is going to break up every pass that's thrown in their vicinity, even if they're right on top of a guy, because it depends on where the ball is thrown, where the receiver's position, maybe the receiver, there was one play I think about that, like the 2019 LSU game at home, like Jalen Green, there was a play where Joe Burrow threw up a fade ball to Jamar Chase and got like a 30-yard gain. And Jalen Green is like covering that thing about as good as you can do. And Jamar Chase just went up and over him and like went over the top of him and pulled it down. I'm like, other than like just tackle him before the ball got there was nothing Jalen Green was going to do to make that an incomplete pass. He played about as perfect technique as you can. So I think you just got to understand, in this league, in one-on-one situations, your DBs aren't going to win all of them. But I do take comfort in the fact that your two leaders in pass breakups this year were Cade Phillips and Grayson Littleton. So I think to CJ's point about Kobe Black, the guys that have been recruited the last couple of years, I think you're starting to see guys, as they get more comfortable, to get more snaps, you'll start seeing more plays made on the ball.
Yep. We got a super chat here from Ben Zaldana. Kalik, Jamie, Dalen need to make jumps next year.
I think it'd be very welcomed. Just seeing the way in which Texas has utilized its young wide receivers, you're kind of seeing how they didn't utilize those freshman young wide receivers. I think the expectation is that they do next year. The problem is, look, you're behind Parker Livingston, Emmett Mosley, Ryan Wingo, right? DeAndre Moore has the opportunity to return or head off to the draft as well. That's a crowded room all the way together. So who do you jump if you're a young freshman? That's tough. And I think it was very clear that Daniel McCutcheon was that next guy up in that wide receiver room. So look, I would love it all if they made jumps. The next jump for them would be into the rotational side of that wide receiver room, which is something that I don't think anyone outside of Dalen truly was.
Sark has a chance, and I hope he does it with some of the on-campus bowl practices, because once you get to the bowl site, like you're just polishing game plan or whatever. Like, you're not actually. I've seen enough bowl practices over there. It's like you're not actually getting like a ton of like physical stuff done when you get to the bowl site. So the on-campus bowl practices, and I think this is key to remember about the portal too. You don't have a spring portal window. So there are guys on this roster, and maybe a couple of guys that are mentioned in this question, that, hey, there may need to be a couple of these bowl practices where you're just letting the guys that didn't play much, you're letting them scrimmage, because they can determine at that point, hey, if by the time we leave for the bowl game and the meaty practices are over, am I in a position to where I can move up the depth chart in January, or do I need to go ahead and enter the portal? Because you don't have the luxury now to say, hey, let me go through spring ball and see where I am at the end of spring, and then I can jump in the portal. No, you don't have that luxury. So I hope Sark uses a couple of these on-campus bowl practices to really evaluate some of the guys on the roster and give guys a chance to, hey, maybe you show the coaches something that you couldn't show them because they're so focused on game planning during the year. I'm not saying, look, they'd love to beat Michigan, but to me, the on-campus bowl prep specifically, it's more about getting your 2026 roster right than it is about getting ready to go beat Michigan.
Yeah. Real quick, I see some comments on DeAndre Moore. Look, I put out the report earlier today. I don't expect him back in a Texas uniform next year, whether that's to the portal, whether that's the draft. That's kind of where I'm hearing the most buzz regarding DeAndre Moore at the moment. So what does that mean for this Texas wide receiver room? As we mentioned, there's 3 guys that are true sophomores that will be back next year as juniors, and obviously that talented freshman class. We'll see what movement happens there. But question from Kyle, can Lockett or French or McCutcheon replace Moore in the offense? Look, I think that's a great question. I think the first guy that comes to mind is Daniel McCutcheon. He was the first guy off the bench for Moore. And when Moore was down in the spring, he was able to catapult himself into the conversation of being a trusted wide receiver because of what he was able to do with Arch Manning and the number one offense in the spring. So obviously a lot has to happen in the spring, or in, these next practices in the spring, fall camp, to earn that position specifically, on top of who does Texas bring out of the portal. That's a big point of emphasis as well. So right now, that's kind of where we sit with DeAndre Moore and the youngsters.
Yeah, DeAndre Moore to me right now is in the same position Jaden Blue was in at this time last year, where if you're going to play college football again, it's not going to be at Texas. You're either going to go portal and go somewhere else and maybe get a big payday, or just go ahead and take your chances in the draft and just start working toward that second contract.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get to a couple more of your questions after we hear from our friend Mark Saunders. When it comes to protecting all your stuff, wouldn't it be great to have one place that protects it all? Here's some good news. Texas Allstate agent Mark Saunders, serving the Austin and Round Rock area and all of Texas, is the only insurance agent you need. Everything from your home, car, and boat to your motorcycle, RV, and ATV. Call Texas Allstate agent Mark Saunders' office today at 512-218-8571. Are you in good hands with more than 35 years of experience? You will be with Texas alum Mark Saunders. If you're looking for someone local to the Austin, Round Rock area and all of Texas, give him a call at 512-218-8571. And
I want to know what the CFP record for a single game is for non-offensive touchdowns, because someone in the chat predicted OU is going to beat Alabama 31-10. Well, you better plan on a pick six and maybe a fumble return or something sets it up where you're like on a short field, because dude, I don't know if OU does make a run at the national championship. I don't know if they'll score 31 points in like the 4 CFP games they need to win to get there.
Sooner Cowboy, did you watch that LSU game? I mean, that was a hard watch.
Like,
that was.
I was talking to a buddy today who's one of my best friends that happens to be an Oklahoma fan, and we're talking about it. I was like, right now, if I'm Ben Arbuckle and Brent Venables, like, we're talking about game plan, like, hey, you probably get like, what's the third best outcome we can have on offense? Punt. Just play field position, because at some point you'll get in a position where Tate Sandell can make a field goal. Like, I don't know. If I'm OU, I plan on trying to win these games like 6-3, because your defense and your special teams are good enough to do that. It's just, I just tell John Mateer, like, whatever you do not turn the football over. Take a sack, eat it, throw it away, whatever. Do not turn the ball over.
Yeah, funny.
I mean,
just last comment on Oklahoma. They scored 30 points against the Power 4 team once this year, and it came against Tennessee, who just fired their defensive coordinator. So that's kind of where their offense is. And again, I feel almost relieved being able to say that, because after all the John Mateer conversation,
a lot of it led by this guy right here, the number one John Mateer fan in the Texas fan base, maybe the only John Mateer fan in the Texas fan base. This guy. So
Matthew, big screen, come on, you give me blushing.
Yeah, sorry to put that on you. That might have been your biggest miss this season, but that's okay. We'll forgive you.
Won't be my last.
Anyways, we got a super chat here from Isaiah Rangel. I know he's coming off injury, but will Kojo be an impact player? And in recruiting, do we lock down the in-state crop of O-line this season coming? It's a name we probably haven't heard in a while because he was knocked out in the preseason, unfortunately. But what do you guys think about Kojo?
It's really tough for big guys to come back in a year off of a knee injury.
Yeah.
What was his knee injury?
ACL.
AC. Yeah.
That's really, really hard for big guys to come back from that and be, a year removed to be good. So I don't know. Can he be? Yes. Would I count on it? No. I'd rather be pleasantly surprised if he is.
Yeah. On top of that, you're basically going to have to learn a brand new position, right? He was a guy that was set to back up or compete with Brandon Baker at right tackle. If he comes back, he's going to be a guard. So that's going to be another obstacle for him to get on the field, is learning the guard position at either side of the ball.
Yeah. Somebody asked earlier in the chat too, was asking about Nick Brooks. I mean, for all intents and purposes, Nick Brooks, we'll see what Texas does in the portal. He's probably going to be assuming Trevor Goosby comes back, he'll be your number 3 tackle next year.
That's the plan.
So.
All right, we're going to hear from our friends over at Culligan's real quick, then we'll get to some more of your questions. You know, when it comes to the water your family drinks and uses every day, you don't want to cut corners. That's why for over 90 years, people have trusted Culligan. And here in Austin, Culligan Ultra Pure has been serving the community for more than 60 years. Culligan Ultra Pure provides high-quality residential water treatment at an affordable price, including reverse osmosis systems, water softeners, and UV purification lights. Whether your water comes from a well or a municipal source, Culligan has the perfect treatment solution for your home. And right now, you can schedule a free water test and save up to $600 when you mention On Texas Football. Culligan Ultra Pure proudly serves Austin, Corpus Christi, Victoria, Brownwood, Pampa, and Plainview. So don't wait. Call Culligan Ultra Pure today at 512-339-2378 to schedule your free water analysis. That's 512-339-2378. And make sure to ask for Michael. Better water starts with Culligan. We got time for a few more of your questions. Super chats jump to the top of our list, and we have one from Catch the Wave X. Any word on Coach Flood's future? Rumors are floating. A lot of rumors are floating. Believe everything you read on the internet with a grain of salt. But what do you think about this, guys?
Look, I haven't heard anything specifically about Kyle Flood. I haven't heard anything, more than what internet banter is being made up. So, look, I know that additional staff changes are coming. That's kind of what these last 2 years have predicted and told me. But right now, Kyle Flood's not a name I've heard that could be one way or the other.
All right, we got another super chat here from Ben Van Zaldana. Is Jamie a speed wide receiver that can blow the top off of DBs?
Look, I not speed demon. He's quick. He's more of a intermediate route runner. I wouldn't say he's anything faster, maybe a 10-7. So, look, that's fast. Don't get me wrong. But with what Texas has seen at that position with Matthew Golden, with Xavier Worthy, right? And I don't think he's that guy. And if he is, I'd happily be wrong there. Route running in the intermediates where he's going to find a lot of his hay.
Yeah, it's, to me, Xavier Worthy, and to an extent, A.D. Mitchell, they've raised the bar for me for what we're calling speed at receiver at Texas.
I thought A.D. Mitchell was a 4.5 guy. Came out 4.34. Made me look like a fool. So, Jeff, what do I know?
I mean, quite frankly, I don't remember what he ran at the combine, but I don't care. Like, Devin Duvernay was another one of those guys. Like, there's fast, and then there's like, dude, you're like track fast, and it translates to the field.
All right, we got a question from GoHorns 2024. What is the status of Daniel Cruz?
It's a great question. Look, again, depending on what happens with Connor Robertson and Cole Hudson, if they opt to play in, the bowl game, that would be Daniel Cruz's first real opportunity to play. And, I think that's something that we'd all be excited to see, given what we've kind of come to build up and, and hear and see and, project for his time on campus. But right now, look, he's still your center number 3, given that it's Connor Robertson and then Cole Hudson if he's unable to go, and Texas would fill in at left guard. But right now, again, still working behind the scenes.
Yeah, I just think at this point, again, we're looking at this as a year-to-year proposition. Daniel Cruz may end up being a really good center, but you can't leave that to chance in what probably is going to be Arch's last year. Like, you got to go into the portal, and if you can go find you like an NFL type center, then go pay for one. Don't leave it to chance.
There is a lot of questions about with declaring for the draft about Gooseby, if he's going to be here. This was his first year starting. The thing is that Gooseby is being mocked in the first round, and the majority of mocks so far mid-first round at that would love for him to come back. Is that one that you guys think would declare for the draft at this point?
Oh, I've been on the fence for Gooseby for quite a while. I think he returns. But if he's getting first-round draft pick projections, I'm saying, brother, go get that guaranteed money. Go get that four-year guarantee with a fifth-year option. Absolutely. Now, again, you get the family aspect. His brother's on campus now. He'll be on the basketball team next year. Should enroll over the summer. Look, I get that. Texas will obviously put together a competitive offer as well to make sure that he comes back and protects the blind side of Arch Manning. But I have to be real. If the kid's projected as a first-round offensive tackle,
yeah,
I'll open the door for him.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of that. It's kind of like we see this all the time. It's more so happens in basketball than it does football. But I've heard, John Calipari, Rick Barnes, various coaches have had conversations with guys like, "Oh, coach, I want to come back," and they're telling guys like, "You're going to be a lottery pick. You need to go. Like you don't need to risk something happening. Like you're guaranteed to go in the lottery. Like go." So if he's now look, there's one thing to have like mock drafts, and Matt Miller, I respect Matt about as much as anybody covering the draft, and he had Trevor Gooseby as his number 15 overall prospect for the 26 draft. I think his number one or number 2 tackle. But there's a difference between what we're seeing out in Gen Pop as far as draft projections go and what NFL scouts and executives are going to tell the Texas staff to relate to Trevor Gooseby about where he really stands. So again, I'm with CJ. If you are basically guaranteed, like they're like, yes, if you come out, you will be a first round pick, then I think you have to go. If it's debatable, or maybe you get some third round feedback, then I think at that point it may be worth it to come back. Me personally, if I were advising Trevor Gooseby, I would advise him to come back just because I think having that extra year to start from a physicality standpoint probably makes you more ready to play as a rookie right out of the gate.
On top of that, it probably solidifies your floor as a first or, late second round pick, in which that money's still fantastic. Jelani McDonald's an interesting conversation as well, because look, he could declare, and I think he's had a year in which had he declared or should he declare, he would end up being a day 2 pick, maybe towards the back end of that. But hey, that's a pretty good spot to be selected for a safety. Now, if he comes back, and I know folks in his camp believe that this is a guy that could play his way into the first round. If he comes back, that ceiling for this year becomes your floor for next year. Kind of assuming that the linear line of development continues, in which I have no reason right now to believe it won't for Jelani McDonald. So right now, I lean Jelani McDonald will return to Austin, and I think he'll be a guy that will be very welcomed with an NIL check waiting at his door should he come back to the University of Texas for next year.
Yeah, the Jelani McDonald thing that I will just – and again, I think this is when you see some of the draft projections and draft talk about Anthony Hill. I think this is something to remember. Neither one of those guys plays a premium position. Like, people are like, oh, how can Anthony Hill not be mocked in the first round? How can he not be a draft process? It's not about his talent. It's about the position he plays. So similar to Jelani McDonald, safety is not a premium position. Especially if you're the Dallas Football Cowboys, you've never treated it like a premium position. You never will, but I digress. So, for Jelani McDonald, if you're a safety, if they're telling you, hey, you're a second round guy, that's probably good enough for you to go. If they're telling you like, hey, maybe you're probably somewhere in the day 3 mix, then you need to come back. My thing with safeties, what really soured me and was kind of the reality check for me on safeties. And Jelani McDonald's going to do much better at the combine than Deshaun Elliott did. But Deshaun Elliott coming off that 2017 season, CJ, I was adamant. I'm like, dude, you need to go cash that lottery ticket. Like your stock will never be higher. And then Deshaun ends up going in the 6th round, 5th round, 6th round. Now he's gotten a couple contracts and he's still playing in the NFL, and he's been a productive player. So I think he's proven a lot of those draft projections wrong. But it's the same deal. Like you just got to remember, it's not about the talent of the player. It's about the position they play and how much is safety valued, and it's just not a valued draft spot.
Yep.
Or draft position, I should say.
All right, we'll get into a few more of your questions and the SEC all honors after we hear from our friend Andy Ludicky one more time. Stuck in the corporate rat race with 2 weeks PTO and no control over the money you can make or your schedule in general, call Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. He'll take you through the process to identify a business that will not only fit your financial goals, but also your skill set. Franchise ownership isn't for everyone, but if you have a desire to take control of your destiny, call Andy or email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. So I wanted to get into the SEC All Honors before we go. We got a good amount of Longhorns, first team, second team, third team. Wanted to see your thoughts on this. Trevor Gooseby, Colin Simmons, Michael Taft, first team, Ryan Wingo, Ant Hill, Malik Muhammad, and Ryan Niblett, second team, and third team, DJ Campbell. Anybody you think here should have been elsewhere, or anybody that surprised you?
Go ahead, Jeff.
Ryan Niblett as the second team return specialist made 0 sense to me.
100%.
Yes, agree.
Because
100%.
he made the play that sealed the Oklahoma game, and you don't beat Kentucky or Mississippi State without him. So if the coach, I know the coaches vote for this, right? I'm assuming it's sports information director or a GA or somebody else, but I hope on the ballots of Brent Venables, Jeff Levy, and whoever's responsible for doing it for Kentucky now, Ryan Illett better have gotten first team votes on that deal because, and the biggest compliment you can give him is he's part of the reason why Kirby Smart kicked the onside kick in the fourth quarter of the Georgia game.
They completely coaching staff's completely game planned against them, stopped punting towards them at all. I'm with you, Jeff. I made the tweet earlier today. He led the SEC in all of these, right? Average punt return, 28.8 yards. Casey Concepcion, a very talented wide receiver at Texas A&M, was the first team all-SEC returner. Look, he didn't have a single kickoff return. He didn't in the punt return game, he only averaged 18 yards per return, had one fewer touchdown, and didn't lead in any of these categories. I thought that this was the most clear-cut answer you could have given. It should have been a unanimous decision across the board in the SEC. This was the biggest snub on the ballot.
Yep, 100% agree. Anybody else that surprised you on this list other than Niblett?
I was pleasantly surprised to see Ryan Wingo on the second team.
Yeah.
But again, like you look at the big plays he made this year, they were all in SEC games. So I was pleasantly surprised for him. Anthony Hill on the second team, I would have put him, if I was voting for this, I'd put him on the first team. But, I think of all the first and second team linebackers that were all SEC, man, you can honestly put all six of them in a hat and draw names. And if there's a different three on the first team and a different three on the second team, probably with the exception of CJ Allen at Georgia, you can make an argument for it.
Yep.
I was surprised to see no Jelani McDonald. I thought he was someone that played really well even after missing a couple games. DJ Campbell is one that I'm very pleased to see, and it's kind of weird seeing two Texas offensive linemen receive recognition considering kind of the year that we obviously had seen for 12 games. But look, for DJ, I think that's fantastic because he played his best football probably of his career towards the back end against Georgia, against Texas A&M. That bodes very well for what his draft stock could be in the spring. So excited for him. On top of that, look, Michael Taft, congratulations. First team. I'm kind of with Rod Babers. Felt like more of a career achievement award, but certainly the heartbeat of this team, the leader of this program, deserved regardless.
Yep.
Yeah, the guy that I felt, and again, so you've got a third team, so basically like you're picking the top 12 defensive linemen in the SEC, and you're including interior guys and edges. I would have liked to have seen Ethan Burke get a third team nod. He's the only guy that was left off that I would stomp for. But all of these guys that made all SEC, look at the best games they played, and the majority of them are either going to be their best game was either against Oklahoma or Texas A&M, with the exception like Ryan Niblett against Mississippi State. Like that's a different deal. And Ryan Wingo, you can argue Vanderbilt was Ryan Wingo's best game because who knows what his numbers would have been like if he didn't have the thumb injury early in that. But like Trevor Goosby, Colin Simmons is probably a different deal too. Michael Taft against A&M, really nice bounce back. DJ Campbell against OU, Malik Muhammad against OU, Trevor Goosby against A&M. I love the fact that these guys showed up in the really big games when you needed them to show up. The reason why you had 3 wins over top 10 teams is because of this group of guys right here with add Arch in there too, but those guys had a lot to do with it.
Yep, definitely. All right, we got a quick super chat from Michael, My Business 3116. Penalties are the majority of the problem. I think we can all agree with that is one of the major problems this Texas team had this season. I think it's what did Texas come in ranked at end of season penalty numbers wise?
In terms of penalties per game, they were second to worst at FBS, and they were I think in the bottom 5 of the Power 4 in penalty yards per game. I'll say this about the penalties at Texas and why this is a look in the mirror moment for Sark. Sean Miller was talking about this last night after the men's game. He was just not happy with what the men did on defense last night, and he was talking about Texas fouls way too much. I think only Vanderbilt right now commits more fouls per game than Texas in the SEC, and he said undisciplined players are coached by undisciplined coaches.
Mm.
and the penalty problem getting worse and worse at Texas every year, that's a man in the mirror moment for Sark and this staff. You got to look internally and figure out what you need to change to get those penalties to go the other way.
Yep.
Yeah, you asked what the rank was. I don't know off the top of my head, but I know it's about 100 spots too low.
Yes.
And that's a bad thing. That's a bad position to be in when you're 100 spots away from where you probably should be.
Yep, definitely. All right. Thanks so much for joining us, guys. Thanks for all the great questions. It was a great show. Make sure y'all tune into Coffee and Football tomorrow morning. But for On Texas Football and this Longhorn Livestream, I'm Amanda Atwell. That's CJ Vogel and Jeff Howell. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great night and hook 'em horns, guys.
Hook 'em.
Happy Tuesday. Thank you, Matthew.